I think one of the biggest challenges, and I think one of the biggest realizations I found when I moved client side, and I've been client side for about 5 or 6 years now, is really just how much time is spent doing what I call having to marketing internally, really build those relationships across the business and convince and persuade people. It's hugely exhausting, it's a huge amount of time, but you have to do it, and it's hugely worth it. So that's what I'm going to talk about a bit about today. And I think digital in particular, so every time I look this way, the mic goes off. But I'm going to try and move around. I think digital in particular holds its own challenges for quite a different reason. You know, we've all seen the stats. Consumers are there, they're using it, you know, a number of people on Facebook, Twitter. It all seems to kind of make sense. And in most cases, people are saying, you know, they're ahead of where we are as companies. But our organisations and often our people aren't. And that for me is sort of twofold really. They're either not bought into the idea that we should be doing something in this space, and I'm going to talk a bit about why I think that really is, or the people who are charged with doing it just aren't skilled to deliver it. So how do you grow that expertise organically within your business? I don't know about you, but I don't have loads of money to hire people, and salaries are high when you're trying to get people in this space. So you've got to grow your people organically inside the business. I think the other sort of big challenge as well, and this I think goes for marketing in general, is that boardrooms really, you know, conversations there are dominated by chat about the top line, the bottom line, cost savings, all of this stuff, and it's hard, you know, to get cut through, to make an impact, to get share of voice. A, if you're marketing, B, if what you've got to talk about is digital. And I think a lot of that is to do, and please don't take this the wrong way, anybody over the age of 45, but you know, a lot of that is to do with the fact that the people you're talking to don't necessarily have the same personal connection as the people now who are growing up with these technologies. But they are very senior leaders, and they don't like to feel exposed, and they don't like you to know that. So it's tricky. How are you going to deal with that? So here are my 7 tips for how to really kind of get this sort of stuff done and get through and get that cut through and impact. So tip number 1 is release your inner geek. Really, all of this starts with yourself. You know, educate yourself in all things digital that you possibly can. Immerse yourself. Take the responsibility for your own learning in this space. You cannot expect to convince somebody else of this if you don't know what this is about yourself. And believe me, I have seen some people try, and it does not work. So, what is your plan? How are you going to really kind of get to grips with this? And here are some quick ideas on this one. I often find, you know, your own personal passions are a great way into this. My personal passion is wine. One day I think I want to start my own wine business. So I'm always, when I'm thinking in this space, I'm always thinking, oh, what could the wine business be like? How would I use Twitter? How would I don't know, build a personality on that? How would I link that with TV? How do I get these videos uploaded? All of this kind of stuff, it's a gateway in. And the people that you're talking to, they'll have personal connections, they'll have personal interests, whether it's football, whether it's music. When you're trying to convince them of these things, you know, the guy who runs Top Gear immediately got a connection when we started talking about music bands he was into and why he would want to receive an email from them. Didn't get it when we were talking about other stuff, it was just spam, wasn't it? But when it was an interest of his, he got it. So personal is a great way in. Get involved in an IT-based project. I probably spent 50% of my time with IT when I was trying to launch our CRM strategy at BBC Worldwide. So spend that time and get involved in something. Entertain, if you like, technology and software companies that want to talk to you. I make it a principle that at least once a month I see those, you know, random cold call people that get in touch with you and want to talk to you. And sometimes it's a waste of time, and sometimes I just come across absolute gems. So put aside that time. And don't be afraid to be the sole marketeer, a bit like I am today in pharmaceuticals, but the sole marketeer at the technology conference. I don't know how many people here have worked with, been bombarded with people like Salesforce. Anybody? A few nodding heads. But, you know, it was an experience going to Dreamforce, go along. I learned a lot. So to put yourself in the way of things you wouldn't normally put yourself in the way of. And ultimately, I suppose what I'm saying is, you know, knowledge is power. but you can't expect to convince other people if you don't know yourself. And my final notice on that one, don't let IT folk blind you or intimidate you with jargon. Ask questions, make them give you answers until they make you understand it. And I've been in pitches where, for our email service provider, where literally the technology guy on the other side of the table turned to my technology colleague and sort of started addressing them. And I thought, hang on a minute, excuse me, you need to explain that to me, I'm the ultimate buyer here. So don't be afraid to do that. Don't let them do it. It is actually quite simple stuff if you ask the questions. Tip number 2, don't get too carried away. Never lose sight of your marketing objectives. Marketing has not changed. The fundamentals of marketing have not changed. This is about consumer insight, and it's about finding the best solution to get to your target audience. The number of agencies that tell me, oh, this client, they just said they needed an app. Why did they need an app? How was that going to reach their target audience? Was that the most efficient way to do it? Maintain your perspective, and you will sustain your credibility at work or in the boardroom when you're talking about this stuff. Is digital the best solution for what you're trying to do? The rules of the game have not changed. Now, tip number 3 is, I do like this one, start from the top and work your way down. And by that, I mean, if you are trying to launch something really majorly big, a big difference in the organisation like we were with eCRM, the first person I want to talk to is the CEO. I want to know why this hasn't happened so far, and I want to know, how he feels about it, what the barriers are, what the blockers are for him. So on this occasion, we put in a sort of 30-minute meeting with John Smith, our CEO at the time. The PowerPoint presentation I prepared, for months, of course, never even got touched. And we had PowerPoint. And we just got down to the nitty-gritty. Are you in support of this, John? What's been stopping this happening in the past? And it was a really good conversation. And his reaction quite surprised me. He said, I want to know why this hasn't happened sooner. I thought, great, he's up for it, okay. But what I wanted to know from him was, well, these are the reasons, in my view, I'd been there a month, why it hasn't happened sooner. Part of showing you that video was also to show you the fact that those headlines that came up, global channels, global brands, sales and distribution, we have 8 divisions, 8 managing directors, 8 P&Ls, and as Beth was saying, it's very tricky getting a whole organisation to work together when things are organised like that. So my point back to John was, are you going to support us and get those people to work together to make this happen? Because if we're going to become consumer-centric, the business needs to be as well. And we need you to give us that support. Are you going to give us a central CRM function and take on headcount to do this? Because that's what's going to be required. And I think John said, yes, I'm right behind you, ladies. And he was. And he gave us 4 hours of board time. We had a workshop with the whole board for 4 hours where we brought in external experts. We talked about the strategy. We had 2 hours with all 150 people on the company's leadership group. And I think above all, really, John has made this one of the top 5 objectives of the company now. I think the hardest thing, and I'm still working on it quite frankly, was to get it into the managing director's objectives. There is nothing like getting your initiative into their objectives. I'm still working on it. So start from the top and then work your way down, because if that guy does not support it, you're going to have a very, very hard time. Tip number 4, get small trials going, even if they're below the radar if necessary, to prove your case. A couple of years ago, so Terry Lee, he gave the presidential address or whatever at the Marketing Society, and he said Club Card would never have happened if they'd gone through a process of sort of putting it all together, presenting it to the board, getting approval. They did a sort of below the radar trial, they got results, and then they presented what their findings were, and Club Card went from there. So, my sort of recommendation is, if you need to, ring fence some money, although most of these things don't take big money. They take passion, effort, time, people who want to do it to help you. So ring fence a little bit of money for that innovation to prove your case. And we had really 2 on this. I don't know if you've heard of a tool called Chatter. It's sort of or a bit like a tool like Yammer. But it was very difficult to convince the business that we needed this. So I said, I'm going to run this event called Digital Power, of which I'll talk more about later. But it was about digital, and it was about learning stuff. And essentially I said, well, the problem is, guys, I've got no digital infrastructure in the company to actually make this happen. We can't share video, we can't comment on things, so I can't run a digital event without some digital backup. So if it's okay with you, we're going to trial this thing called Chatter and see how it goes. And we got a lot of comms weren't really sure. I think they could see, you know, losing control over communications amongst people. They made me meet with data protection, who, thank God, I knew very well from ECRM. Are there any more barriers? You know, there must be data issues with this. There weren't. And, you know, we got agreement, but the price of that was myself and my PA inputted over 600 names as people came through and requested to be put onto this. That was a third of the company, hand-cranked by me and my PA to get this to happen. But by God, it was going to happen. And we got some brilliant results afterwards. You know, a third of the company spontaneously wanting to be part of something said we needed a tool like this. And on the analytics platform we were using for ECRM, I wanted to do a trial with a new company that sort of was coming through. Again, one of these I'd randomly met. And the guy who ran our big website said, I've never seen any analytics that will help me do what I need to do, that will properly segment my audience. Go on, Paul, give it a go. I'll pay. It's 20 grand to do this trial. I'll pay. Oh, you're not going to convince me, Rebecca. Give it a go. So anyway, we did. We ran the trial. He's now rolled it across all of his sites. He's paid for it all himself, and, you know, fully admitted, you know, fair dues, you know, I should give these things a go. So just be persistent and just get a few small things happening, and you'll really pick up momentum. Tip number 5 is, I guess, form alliances across the whole organisation to really kind of get support and excitement. There will be people out there who are really, really into this from all sorts of strange places. The biggest user of Chatter that I have in the business is our head of general counsel. He's in the legal department. And it's because he wants his team to share information. He even sends out notes on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock saying, if you're on Chatter, you can go home early. I'll leave it up to you if you tell the other people who haven't bothered yet to get on it. I mean, bless the guy. Legal. Who'd have thought the biggest supporter of digital marketing would be in legal? So bless Martin. And his people come to everything that we do. HR really wanted to do a digital learning day. It sounds very HR, sorry guys. And they didn't have any budget. So I said, well, let's do 2 weeks, 20 hands-on sessions. People can learn to code. People can hear about our strategy. They can learn about apps. Let's do it together. But really make a big event of this and a bit of a song and dance about it. So, you know, again, more alliances. They get something, we get something. And IT as well. I mentioned we spent a lot of time with them. People in IT who worked on our project all went on a Chartered Institute of Marketing ECRM course, so that they understood what we were trying to achieve, and at least at the top level, what marketing was about. The final thing I'd say, really big tip on this one, is if you've got people who are sort of under 25 in your company, I had an intern at the time who's 23, you know, the so-called you know, Gen Yers. Listen to them, talk to them, find out what they want. Lucy, that used to work for me, he found the company that I did the Code in a Day course with, a company called Decoded, because he wanted to go on it. We've actually made all of our marketing leadership go and code for a day. But these people, these Gen Yers, they're the people who will help you. And in the US, we've got a whole group of them. They're called the Digerati group. And I think every month they go and brief the management team on what's hot and what's happening in digital. So, you know, harness these people. They know what's going on. And if you do this, you'll find people, you know, who have a real interest in this in the business, and they'll support you. When we did Digital Power, as I said, it was sort of me and a PA, but we ended up with a team of 20 people, none of whom it was in their job spec or their objectives to help out on this. From IT, from production, you name it. You know, there are people out there with a passion, and they'll come and help you if you just kind of hold up a big light and say, we're over here, let's do this. And sort of which leads on to tip number 6, which is inspire the whole organisation. Don't just think about marketing or think about the board. Do something, do a big event that gets it on the radar, like Digital Power, that brings everybody together, and you know, and I suppose just gives people the opportunity to ask stupid questions. I think the biggest barrier in this whole digital piece is that people lack the confidence, And they don't want to expose themselves and say that they don't know it. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. But this was a real opportunity for people to kind of actually get hands-on and increase their confidence and their skills in this area. So, think about the whole organisation. And tip number 7, and I should say this because I guess my job title is Head of Marketing Effectiveness, is give yourself targets, KPIs, measures. Even if you don't share them, do some for yourself. And also I'd say, make them fun. When I was working on the CRM strategy, yes, we had monthly reporting that kind of kept people true to what we were trying to achieve. But we also, the board sponsor I had on this, he's quite a people person, but he's a very, very numbers-driven person as well. So I literally had one piece of paper with the numbers on one side, and on the other side, I actually had a sort of ranking system for the degree of buy-in and collaboration we had from different parts of the business. And he's Glaswegian, so he talked a lot about taking people down a dark alley. So I had sort of 3 categorisations of people in the business, which, by the way, we didn't share. But, there was one group of people who were sort of on the beach having a cocktail. They were there, they were working with us, they'd got it happening, they wanted this. There were people who we said were sort of in the waiting area, but the airport waiting area. They were sort of there, but they'd not quite got on the plane yet. And then there were people in the sort of baseball back group. That was all because of Marcus and his dark alleys. But just giving a feel of where people are at, who needs a bit of encouragement, who's doing well, and thinking about the kind of people side of it as well. So to conclude, I should conclude with results, I suppose, and I will conclude with results. And the results really so far have been that since we started ECRM in the first year, we've doubled our ECM database from about 2.5 to 5 million contacts. And that was whilst building an infrastructure as well, so engaging the whole business and driving that forward. As I mentioned, we're now in John's top 5 things, strategies he wants to do in the business. Digital power was also something he mentioned in his annual report, and for something that was never directed and came from nowhere, that's not a bad thing. And we just ran actually a digital power day, which was a kind of short, sharp shock on search and display advertising for people. Chatter's, not only is Chatter being rolled out in the business, but I think the biggest achievement on that one is that the board meeting slot took 10 minutes on this subject. 10. We had questions and agreement in 10 minutes. So if you can do your legwork and build your case before you ever get there, that the job is done for you. And obviously we've got sort of a totally new way of looking at our analytics. But I think the final thing I'd like to say is, just do not forget, lots of people are saying, I was at the Marketing Society conference yesterday, marketing's under threat, marketing's lost its way. I think one of the biggest things we've all got to think about is how we marketing internally in organisations. And I think you almost need to treat your internal stakeholders just as you would treat your consumers. What's the insight about that person that I'm going to have to convince to do this? So I think you need, and I'm not going to say like the 4 Ps of marketing, but the 3 Ps, these are my 3 Ps. First of all, you need a plan. Who are the stakeholders? What's the strategy? What are you doing? We all need a plan. And what's the plan for yourself? You need passion. You really need to believe in this stuff and know your stuff. But I think above all, and I feel quite knackered, you need persistence. Do not give up. Do not let people will say no. They will say this is not possible. They will say we are not ready. Get ready. Don't give up. Be persistent and keep going because it's worth it. You'll get there in the end. That's it.